What is the worst example of bad parenting you've seen? I once saw a 5-6-year-old swinging from the above-head handles of a local train. She had climbed on the back of the chairs to get there. Both parents were wasted playing on their phones, fosters in hand. During the course of the gymnastic display, the kid's foot hit the alarm for wheelchair users, so the train stopped for the driver to come check if there was an emergency. It all made me angry and sad. Bonus edit. On the same train line, I once saw a mother dipping French fries in her small baby's mouth so that it could suck on the salt/grease. Bonus. Same train line, a mother put a small bucket down for her kid to pee into. As anyone older than the child would predict, pee went everywhere. Sometime I think there should be a parental version of Judge Dredd.
It's wild how some parents just zone out while their kids do their own thing. I mean, that girl swinging from the train handles could have gotten hurt. And the mom feeding her baby fries? Not sure why that seems like a good idea. The pee incident just adds to the whole scene. Makes you wonder about the responsibility of being a parent. Sometimes it feels like common sense goes out the window.
Once I was waiting at my doctor's office, there was this woman and her son. He was busy playing around with the toys in the waiting room. Then he grabbed a Magnadoodle. You know that thing you could draw on that works with that little pen? So he was drawing on that thing when suddenly he turns to his mother to proudly present her a son he'd just drawn. The mother asked him what the drawn thing was meant to be. He replied, "That's a sun." Her answer, "What the hell? That's a sun? It looks nothing like one." Clack, clack, and she deleted his picture by sliding that thing from one SIE to the other. Then she drew a sun herself and said, "This is what a sun looks like." And her boy was instantly sad. The whole conversation between them was sad, and the mother had a very annoyed tone the whole time. I can still recall the boy's sad face.
It's funny how sometimes a simple moment can stick with you. I remember seeing a little kid show off his drawing just to be shut down by his mom. She thought it didn't look like a sun, and then erased it right in front of him. The disappointment on his face was hard to watch. Kids just want encouragement, you know? That moment felt way heavier than it should have been.
At a college graduation, lady behind my GF had 2 kids. Kids are climbing all over seats on the rows above and below theirs. One tried repeatedly to talk to my GF during speeches and awards. She climbed on her lap at one point. My GF was very gracious and patient and tried to get the kid to sit quietly in a chair. Mother was on her phone the whole time, not even paying attention to the ceremony.
It was a pretty typical scene. My girlfriend handled the situation well, trying to keep the kid settled while the mother was checked out. It's a bit frustrating when parents don't step up. The ceremony was important, but the distraction just kept happening. My GF remained composed, which was nice. I guess you can't control everything around you, especially at crowded events like that. Just another graduation moment, I suppose.
I worked at a gas station during high school. There was a hooker hotel across the street, and the girls would come in throughout the night to buy smokes, condoms, whatever. This cracky-looking lady would make her 3 small kids stay in the car while she turned tricks. One day she came in, the kids were begging for food, and Mom says, "You kids need fruits and vegetables. Go pick out a popsicle, Kool-Aid, and water basically." As they were leaving, I gave the kids some fruit and portable lunches, no charge. I really hope those kids did not turn out like Mom.
That must have been tough to witness. It's pretty messed up how some parents prioritize their needs over their kids. That was a decent move on your part, giving those kids something healthy. It's wild to think about the situation those kids might have faced growing up. You don't often see that side of life when you're just going through your day. Kids really deserve better than that kind of upbringing.
The guy who was my best friend growing up and throughout my entire life had the most permissive parents on the planet. They let him drink at home, smoke pot, and use other drugs, and have girls up at his room when he was only 12 years old. Hell, They even gave us the keys to their van to cruise around in, knowing full well we'd just be loading up on beer and driving around partying with our friends. He somehow managed to graduate from college. He was a smart guy, just spent too much time partying, and get a good job as an insurance analyst. He got married, bought a house, had a kid. All seemed right. He continued to party, but then when he got laid off, he never got back on his feet. Full-blown alcoholic and drug addict. His marriage ended. He was either homeless or living with friends or family. And 8 years ago, he collapsed and died. Seems like his liver finally gave out at age 44. What a waste. I miss him every day. TLDR abdication of parental responsibility generally does not end well for the kid.
It's tough to see how things turned out for your friend. Growing up, he had a lot of freedom, but it came with consequences. He seemed to have a bright future at first, but the partying caught up with him. Losing someone like that can leave a big void. It's a reminder of how important balance is in life. Makes you think about the choices we all make and their impact.
A woman and her little daughter were crossing the street, just like me. The daughter, about 4 or 5, started to ask, Mom, how dogs help blind people to walk around? The mother, clearly impatient, says in a pissed tone, Shut up. Stop being curious about things. Can't you stay quiet for a while? Jesus, I hope things got better for the poor kid. Sad face.
It's tough to see moments like that. It reminds me of a time I overheard a kid asking a parent questions, but the adult just brushed them off. Kids ask questions to learn, and it's sad when they don't get the encouragement they need. I hope that mother could take a step back and realize the importance of those curious moments. Kids deserve better than that.
My mom used to use her arm as a seatbelt when I was a kid. When she put the brakes on, when she remembered, she would throw her arm up and stop us from going forward. But half the time, she didn't even remember, so we'd just fly all over the car. I don't think I ever even clicked the seatbelt till around 1994. Probably terrible parenting, but I honestly have a smile on my face thinking about it right now.
That's a pretty relatable story. A lot of us grew up with parents who had their own ways of keeping us safe, even if they weren't always the best. It's funny how those memories stick with us. Sounds like you have a mix of nostalgia and some wild rides as a kid. Those moments can really shape how we view safety and parenting later on.
I don't really have my own account, but I remember a general account of my dad's worst experience. Him, my mother, and brother were having a meal at Disney World. While there, a couple allowed their kids to run around and be loud and obnoxious. Then, when the kids became too annoying for them, the parents would out the kids to time out at other people's tables. The best part was when the family finally left, as everybody in the restaurant started to applaud their departure before they were out the door.
That sounds like a memorable experience. It's interesting how people can turn a dining experience into a spectacle. The kids running around and the parents not really taking charge must have been frustrating. Applauding their departure? That's pretty bold. You don't usually see that kind of reaction in public. It definitely shows how everyone felt about the situation. Seems like a good story to tell later.
Certainly not the worst compared to other stories, but a few months back I was in a McDonald's and mother and her 10-11-ish daughter sat down close by. I didn't pay them any attention, but it was the daughter's voice that made me notice them. It was quiet and cautious. The daughter was actually really pretty and just by appearances should have been really outgoing. I could tell she wanted to talk to her mom, but was scared of her. The mom just sat there and would give one-word answers and clearly didn't want to talk. I think the kid used the word stupid, and that set the mom off. First stating the word was inappropriate, but quickly transitioned into telling her to shut up during supper so she can eat in silence. So, she just sat there in silence, and to me, it was kind of heartbreaking to watch. I wanted to say something to the mom or invite the girl to come talk to me, but I was alone and neither option would have gone over well.
That situation sounds tough to witness. It's hard seeing a kid wanting to connect but being shut down. Sometimes, parents can forget the impact of their words. I've had moments like that too. Being in a public space, you just feel for those kids who are struggling for attention or affirmation. You want to help, but it's tricky when it's not your place. Just a sad reminder of some relationships out there.
I used to care for a little boy. When he started our daycare, he was 3 years old and still couldn't say a single word, not even ma. His front teeth were entirely rotted from some type of sugary drink, and he was still in diapers with no attempt made at potty training. We soon found out that he had just been placed in his grandmother's care, as both his parents were in jail for drug-related offenses. At some point, his mom got out of jail and did seem to be making an attempt to be a better parent. She picked him up occasionally, but his father died of an unknown cause. Luckily for the little boy, his grandmother was doing her best to make up for his parents, but when I left that daycare, he was 4 and still could barely speak. I just couldn't believe that this kid had gone through 3 years of life, and his parents must have barely spoken to him or around him. Kids learn language by listening to their parents, so I can't even imagine what his life was like before his grandma got custody.
It's tough to see what some kids go through before they even have a chance to speak. I remember a friend from school who had a similar life, moving around a lot and dealing with family issues. They struggled to fit in but gradually found their voice. Kids need support, and it's sad how some don't get it early on. It makes you think about the impact of a stable environment.
Fortunately, I haven't witnessed anything I would consider abuse. But I'm in my 20s with no kids of my own, so I don't spend much time around parents and their children. However, the most frustrating examples for me personally are when parents bring their young children out to public places that mainly cater to adults and let them be disruptive without trying to stop it. Even more so if they're offended by people who ask them to control their kids or to leave. Why would you bring your toddler to see a PG, 13, or R-rated movie at the theater? Why would you bring your kid out to a nice restaurant without finding a way to keep them occupied? Why would you board a flight with your kids and not bring any toys or books for them? I get that sometimes children have behavioral problems that are difficult to handle. I'm sympathetic to parents who are clearly doing their best, but there's no excuse for not planning ahead and making zero effort to control/discipline the kid.
I can relate to that. I remember going to a nice restaurant once, and there was a toddler running around, shouting. The parents didn't seem to care. It kind of ruins the vibe for everyone else. I get that kids can be tough to manage, but a little planning goes a long way. Just some quiet toys could help keep them occupied. Makes the experience better for everyone.
My stoned ass was in Walmart at 3 in the morning because I had a craving for some chocolate milk. I saw a lady pushing her cart with 3 kids in tow. The oldest was about 5, wearing nothing but cowboy boots and tidy white ease, and drinking Coca-Cola out of a bottle. I was so dumbfounded it killed my high.
That's wild. It's funny how random moments can snap you back to reality. Being in a Walmart that late, you kind of expect to see strange things. A kid in boots and underwear is definitely something you don't see every day. Guess it just goes to show how unpredictable life can be, especially at 3 a.m. Chocolate milk cravings can lead to unexpected adventures, I guess.
I was at the local community pool once, and a mom was about 6 or 7 feet from her kid who was playing in the pool. The little girl was no older than 6, and her mom's nose was buried in some magazine. The little girl was trying to do flips or something of that nature in the water, and kept saying, "Look, mommy." The mother didn't pick her head up at all. At one point, the child slipped and panicked and began drowning. She was trying to say, "Mommy, help," but there was too much water in the way. The mother didn't even budge despite obvious sounds of distress splashing. Lifeguards saved the woman's daughter, thankfully, and when they returned her to her mom, the mom was basically like, "Okay, whatever," and she returned her magazine. TLDR. Some little girl was playing in the pool with her ignorant mom nearby. The girl started to drown without the mother noticing, and after lifeguards save her daughter, the mom didn't really care much.
That's a pretty wild story. It's strange how some people can be so oblivious. Like, a mom should be paying attention, especially with a kid in the water. It's good the lifeguards were there, but that kid could have been in real trouble. Sometimes, you just have to wonder what's going on in people's heads when they're so focused on something else. A wake-up call for sure.
We know a couple, we'll call them the Smiths, with kids age 5 and 7, and they live in a subdivision that is about half a mile off a main road with relatively heavy traffic. One day, a neighbor of theirs was driving home and was about to pull into the sub and saw the Smiths' children standing on the edge of the main road, trying to cross it by themselves. She hopped out and grabbed them and brought them home. The mother was not home, and the dad was hungover and fell asleep in the middle of the day. And it's also very typical for the Smith children to be out in the subdivision roads playing alone, unsupervised.
This reminds me of a neighbor I had once. Their kids would play outside a lot, often without anyone watching them. It was kind of a regular thing. One day, a friend passing by saw them in a similar situation and had to step in. The parents weren't really paying attention, caught up in their own lives. It's interesting how sometimes strangers look out for each other's kids more than the parents do.
My husband and I went out for lunch once and watched in horror as a woman let her young, 5-ish child run around a restaurant, into the kitchen and out into the parking lot, all the while gorging herself on all-you-can-eat crab legs. We left at around the same time as the woman and watched her drive away with the kid in the back, not even wearing a seatbelt, let alone using a car seat/booster. We reported her license plate to the police, but I don't know if anything ever came of it.
That sounds pretty wild. It's one of those moments that makes you realize not everyone's on the same page when it comes to safety. It's good you reported it though. People need to be called out for that kind of negligence. Hope that kid is okay. You just never know what someone is thinking in those situations. It's all a bit too much sometimes.
I know a woman who thought when her son acted out as a kid it was cute, so he was never very disciplined. He was obviously her favorite over his older brother when they were young. She pretty much ignored that one. As soon as the younger brother grew up a bit, and it wasn't cute to her anymore, she didn't like it and couldn't understand why he acted that way. Now she sends him to military school. She constantly brags about the older one now. The younger one will be old enough to legally emancipate in 2 years, and she told me that she's hoping he would. It's all just so sad. He's a sweet kid that was never really taught how to behave.
It's tough to see that kind of favoritism. Kids can pick up on that, and it creates a divide. The weird part is how she can't connect the dots between her actions and his behavior. Sending him away probably won't fix things. It's sad to think he'll likely struggle for the next couple of years when he really just needed guidance. Hopefully, he finds a better path when he gets his freedom.
Years ago, when I was about 12 or 13, the whole family were in the car driving down the road towards our house. We were a few houses away when suddenly my dad slams the brakes on to avoid hitting a toddler that had just wandered into the road in nothing but a nappy. Couldn't have been more than 18 months old. Quick look around, and there was no one to be seen. My dad gets out of the car and picks the kid up, who actually held their arms out for a total stranger to pick them up. Knocked on the door of the house we suspected the kid from. A guy answers. My dad tells him what just happened. The guy just says, "Cheers, mate," takes the kid off him, and closes the door. That's the kind of neighborhood I grew up in.
That's a wild story. Kids can wander off, and it's good your dad was alert. It's strange how some people react in situations like that. You'd think there'd be more concern. It paints a picture of the neighborhood though. Sounds like a tight-knit community, but also a bit careless. That kid probably had a wild ride there, but at least he was safe in the end.
A year after our infant died, We went to a memorial service hosted by the Hospital for Parents Who Have Lost Infants. The crowd consisted of about 20 couples, parents who at one point or another had experienced the death of their infant. About 5 minutes before the memorial service, a family arrived with a child who looked to be about 6 months old. A beautiful, healthy, smiling baby right in the middle of a memorial to dead infants. It was the worst case of parenting I've ever seen because these people had no regard for the other parents around them.
That situation sounds really tough. It must have been hard to see that healthy baby among parents who were mourning. It's like they were in their own world, not considering how it might affect others. Sometimes people just don't understand the impact of their actions on those who are grieving. It's a reminder of how delicate those moments can be for everyone involved.
My parents took me to Atlantic City for a day when I was 13 or 15 and proceeded to hit casino after casino. In each casino, an employee would promptly come up, ask how old I was, and say that no one under 21 was allowed on the casino floor. My parents didn't want to leave, so they had the employee escort me to wait, alone, in the hallway outside. The hallway doubled as the designated smoking area. I would sit there for hours surrounded by smokers until my parents emerged to get me. Then we'd walk to the next casino, and the same thing would happen all over again. And again. And again. My lungs aged 5 years that day.
That sounds like a rough day. Being stuck outside while your parents enjoyed the casinos must have been frustrating. I guess you just had to sit there, watching people smoke. It's a pretty odd experience for a kid, just waiting around without much to do. At least you got some stories out of it. Can't say it was the most fun way to spend a day in Atlantic City.
Literally just saw this less than an hour ago. Was at the stop and shop parking lot going back to my car. Across from me and down a bit was this Jeep. 2 kids inside were climbing out the windows and jumping on the roof, rocking the car and going ape. They then got out and had fucking races back and forth across the street. They could have been hit. They could have fell off the car and hurt themselves. Their mother didn't even care about them enough to lock the doors when she left them in there. Sad, really.
It's wild how some parents just don't pay attention. Seeing kids act like that, you can't help but think about the risks involved. I mean, it's a parking lot. Just a little bit of supervision could make a big difference. Reminds me of being a kid sometimes, doing reckless stuff without thinking. But then again, we had boundaries. It's just a shame to see that kind of neglect.
Maybe not the worst, but I saw a mother with her child at a bus stop once. Her child was trying to get her attention for 5 solid minutes, while mom was just on the phone talking to her friend about the party this weekend and the drinks she was going to bring and how crazy it was going to get. She never once acknowledged what her child wanted to show her. And I think even told her to shut up once. Not as crazy as some stories, but still I felt bad for that kid. I got the feeling her mom ignores her a lot.
Yeah, that kind of thing sticks with you. It's rough seeing a kid just trying to connect while the parent is totally checked out. It really makes you think about how a lot of folks get lost in their own worlds. Just a simple acknowledgement could mean a lot for that child. Seems like a reminder that those small moments matter a lot.
I was working as a dental assistant for a while in mainly a Medicaid office, and a few incidents stood out to me. One being the mother giving her 3-year-old son iced coffee while in the chair waiting for me to come take x-rays. I tell the kid to open up so I can put the x-ray plate in his mouth, and he has no teeth. They are all rotted nubs and inflamed gums. The mom said she puts soda in his sipping cup where he doesn't drink. That was super disturbing to deal with. The other was the woman who on the other end of the spectrum was being overprotective and refused x-rays, refused fluoride, okay. I get it, but to refuse us to use Novocaine to fill a huge cavity and let the kid suffer through the drilling, that was just weird. She also refused to take the kid to a pediatric dentist to be sedated.
It's interesting how some parents approach things differently. That kid with the iced coffee is a real eye-opener. It's kind of hard to see such neglect, especially with dental care. On the flip side, the overprotective mom is just as tough to understand. Not wanting X-rays or Novocaine can really put a kid in a tough spot. Balancing what's best for them isn't easy for some. It just shows the range of experiences in that field.
My sister-in-law, full out rage, yells at her kids for everything and then doesn't enforce punishments. Dishes in the sink. Yells. TV left on. Yells. Caught smoking. Yells. Punishments. Groundings and taking things away. It never lasts more than 2 days. Now, 2 of 3 have been arrested for shoplifting and drug use, and she comes to their rescue every time.
It's kind of tough to watch. Seems like she's venting frustrations instead of actually handling the situation. Yelling doesn't seem to stick, and neither do her consequences. Maybe if she changed her approach, things would be different. It's probably frustrating for her too, especially now that it's escalated to serious problems. You gotta wonder if she sees the bigger picture or just keeps reacting.
At the restaurant I used to work at, we had a glass balcony upstairs overlooking the bar. As I was headed to the kitchen, I saw a kid sat straddling the edge of the balcony and freaked the fuck out. I picked him up and told him how dangerous it was and that he shouldn't be playing without adult supervision in a restaurant. I took him down to his mother, who was half-cut and on a date, and told her what happened. She was kind of mad about it, then complained to the manager that I was rude to her. "Sorry I saved your kid, lady."
Sounds like a wild day at work. You see a kid in a risky spot and you jump into action, only to get attitude from the parent. It's crazy how some people react. You think they'd be grateful, but instead, they're more concerned about their own feelings. At least you did the right thing. Kids can be reckless, and it's good someone stepped in.
So my aunt was telling me this story from her job. She works as loss prevention at Costco. Basically, Costco doesn't believe in security cameras, so they pay people to pretend like they are customers and they watch for/confront and catch shoplifters. She was following this middle-aged woman about 30 to 35 and her daughter, who couldn't have been more than 6 years old, who had a little backpack on. The lady was acting pretty suspicious and wasn't doing any real shopping. They went over to the DVD/electronic section, and the lady started shoving Blu-rays and DVDs in her daughter's backpack. My aunt called security, and she confronted the lady and asked her to follow her to the security office. They called the police and DCFS. It astounds me how shitty people can be.
It's wild how some people think they can get away with stuff like that, especially in a place like Costco. Your aunt really had to keep her cool while handling that situation. It's kind of a dark reminder of how some folks act when they think no one is watching. Going after a few movies with a kid involved is just low. Good thing your aunt noticed before it got worse.
I was on a public bus, and 2 adults were conversing about how fucked up they were and loudly talking gratuitously about their sex life. They were high as shit, being complete assholes, when all of a sudden from the rear of a bus you hear a boy chime in and chastise his parents. He was in tears and obviously distraught. They didn't know he was on the bus behind them. I've never felt so awful for a kid in my life. He looked so defeated and empty. I still remember his face and demeanor. Poor guy.
That sounds rough. It's tough when adults forget there are kids around. Seeing that boy so upset must have been hard. I can imagine feeling angry and sad for him at the same time. Kids shouldn't have to deal with stuff like that. It's a reminder that everyone should be more aware of their surroundings. That kid deserves better for sure.
I have told this story before, and it's probably way too late to be seen, but here we go. My ex-boss' daughter started college while she was 17. A few weeks before her 18th birthday, she told her mom that she was going to get a nose ring once she had her birthday. My boss was not okay with this, and during lunch one day was complaining about her daughter's choice, saying things like, "I told her that if she gets a nose ring, that's it. She's not allowed to come home." She can spend the summer at her grandparents because I don't want to see it, and I don't know what would ever possess her to want a nose ring in the first place. Then she said, and I quote, "We got her the tattoo she wanted, so I just don't understand why she wanted a nose ring." I just stared at her.
It's funny how some parents set boundaries while still allowing other forms of self-expression. Your boss was really fixated on that nose ring. I mean, a tattoo is permanent, but a nose ring can be removed. It seems like the daughter's choices were more about asserting her independence. Looking back, it probably felt a bit strange to hear such strong opinions from someone who already let their kid get inked.
I used to work at Jimmy John's. This woman came in with her son. He was probably around 10. She orders food and gets 2 fountain drink cups with the meals. The kid goes over to soda machine and tells his mom he wants water. Mom responds, "Water? I paid for that cup. Get soda or fruit punch." I also used to work in sessions at a movie theater. Group of 4 guys, appears to be a father and his 3 sons or maybe nephews. All of them are overweight. 3 of them order large popcorns, so like a duffel bag, and large sodas, which is basically a 5-gallon bucket of sugar water. The youngest one, probably around 13, still overweight, but not nearly to the extent of his family, looks at the towering cup hesitantly and says he just wants a small soda/popcorn combo. The dad similarly shames him with something to the extent of, "What are you getting the small for? Large is only an extra $1, plus refills." So the kid sheepishly orders a large Diet Coke. Not only were these parents setting bad food examples, they were actively encouraging terrible choices. It made me really sad to see.
It's pretty wild how some parents handle food choices for their kids. I remember seeing a kid wanting to make a healthier choice but being pressured into something less so by his dad. It's like they don't realize those little moments can shape habits. It's not just about the food, it's how these interactions can stick with kids long term. Makes you think about the impact of our decisions on the younger ones.
There was a kid in nursery I worked in. It was 2 weeks before Christmas. He hadn't wanted to come in nursery and had acted up a bit. So his mom told him that she was canceling Christmas. She literally packed away all the presents and tree into the garden shed to punish a 4-year-old for acting up. The kid was absolutely distraught when he came in.
That's a tough situation for a kid. I mean, Christmas is a big deal at that age. I remember a friend had a similar experience where their parents would threaten to take away fun things if they misbehaved. It's strange how some adults think that works. Kids just need a bit of understanding, really. It's hard to see them go through that when they should be enjoying the holidays.
I was paddleboarding at a lake with my friend last week, and we started talking to this really nice couple. They had 4 kids with them. 2 were a different race than the parents. The dad was teaching the kids to fish and cheering them on, so we assumed they had 2 adopted children. The boy asked to sit on my board, and the dad asked if he knew how to swim. At that point I thought, okay, not his kid or he'd know that. Probably a neighbor friend or something. Then the parents call me and my friend over and tell us that they don't know those kids. The mom apparently left them 2.5 hours ago to get the car. My reaction was, she just asked you guys to watch her kids, even though you're strangers? And he said, oh no, she didn't ask. We just overheard her telling the kids she was leaving to get the car. The kids were 3 and 8 and next to a freaking lake when they couldn't swim. The sun had started to set, and we were just about to call the cops when she came back.
That's a wild situation. Just leaves you wondering how people can be so careless. Those kids could have been in real danger, especially by the water. Good thing you and your friend were there to keep an eye on them. Not everyone would react the same way. It really makes you think about how important it is to look out for each other, even if you don't know someone. Just a strange day at the lake.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.